David Gaines, a young biologist from LA, and a dozen University of California students had begun a careful study of Mono Lake's singular ecosystem. They found it on the brink of collapse.
We knew about Owens Lake, of course. No, just a dry ditch, 100 miles to the south. And we realized that Mono Lake could look like that someday. And once we realized what was here, that all that would be lost, we couldn't let it just go down without making some effort to save it.
By 1976, Mono Lake had fallen 40 feet, exposing mineral towers which had formed underwater over the ages. It had become 3 times saltier than the ocean.
What we are asking, what Mono Lake is asking all of us is, where are we going to draw the line? If we don't share some water with Mono Lake, what will be next? Will it be Lake Tahoe? Will it be the Eel River, the Yukon? Will it be on and on until the last of our singing rivers and beautiful lakes are gone because we've taken every last drop? We've watched the last waterfowl and the last salmon follow the California state emblem, the California grizzly, into oblivion. It is a battleground in that sense. It's asking us, how much are we going to share with the earth?
Well, it was very primitive. I mean, there was 12 people, only 1 or 2 cars. Everybody else did their research via bicycle. They'd take their binoculars in their backpack and their lunch, and they'd hop on their bikes, and they'd ride down the dirt roads and dump their bikes and hike out for a couple miles, and they'd walk through mud, and, they were really the quintessential researchers out there braving the elements.
All those college boys come over here, they all want to look like professors, and got big beards, and so Mr. Gaines, he was one of them, and he looked just like the rest of them, kind of like a hippie, I'd say, but I don't want to say he wasn't a hippie, but he looked that way, But he was pretty smart, that guy. He'd started things going here.
When I grew up in Los Angeles, I never learned where water came from. And it was only after doing some complex calculations that we learned that if diversions continue, this lake will fall another 40 to 60 vertical feet. What we will be left with is an alkali wasteland, a sterile chemical sump, where there is now one of the most beautiful and life-productive places on Earth.
Far more than natural beauty was threatened at Mono Lake.
What was at stake was a big aquatic ecosystem that was very simple but very productive. I mean, the numbers are astronomical. You've got algae, and then the brine shrimp eat the algae, and then you've got millions of birds coming every summer to eat the brine flies and the brine shrimps. A far-off dream was out there, but I don't think we gazed up at it too much. It might be too discouraging. I mean, to have a handful of biologists fighting the Department of Water and Power of the City of Los Angeles with a multi-million-dollar budget was too big of a contrast.
When William Mulholland took water from Owens Valley and Mono Lake years before, no one questioned the damage to nature. But an environmental movement had come of age in America, along with powerful new laws and a great shift in public opinion. Committees at Mono Lake and Owens Valley, together with the Audubon Society, went to court to stop the water conquest Mulholland had set in motion in 1905.
If you're angry and have nothing else, no other recourse, I think dynamite comes to mind. And they were ranchers. They understood dynamite. We were college biologists. No experience with dynamite. We knew facts and figures, and we knew that we could, we're educated people, and we could probably figure out how to find lobbyists to help us in Sacramento, and how to find lawyers. People were saying, well, ask for a lot, go way high, and then you compromise down with the politicians and the agencies. And we were all biologists, and we kind of said, that doesn't sound right. Why can't we just start with what we know is the truth and just stay there forever? And that's what we did.
The courts ruled that drying out the Owens River or streams feeding Mono Lake was not in the public interest. In 1988, the state forced the city to return water to Mono for the first time in half a century. Los Angeles began water conservation on a scale never before seen in America, and now shares the water in a fragile peace with Owens Valley and Mono Lake.
One local person said, if you guys save the lake, I'll eat my hat. It turns out that we've saved the lake and we have the regulations, and people seem much happier. You see water running down the creek, fish in the creek. Maybe some of them remember the great numbers of ducks and geese that were down at the lake, and they look forward to that being in the future again.
I didn't think that they would succeed in persuading the city of Los Angeles to let the water in again.
Why did you think that they would not succeed?
Well, how can you fight the city of Los Angeles? So really, this is a victory, a great victory.
David Gaines did not live to see the victory. He had died a year before in an automobile accident not far from Mono Lake.
And so finally, the machine that Mulholland had set in motion just kind of began to fall apart. The whole posture of the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power and the city changed. The city negotiated with Mono Lake folks and decided to give more water back to the lake. It gave up on the idea of importing Klamath River water or Columbia River water. I think ultimately it was people's feeling, why bring more water in if it just encourages more growth that forces us to bring more water in? You know, it's a sort of a death vortex. It's the Red Queen in Alice in Wonderland, running faster and faster just to stay in place. And that mentality has sort of died a respectful death. And, you know, if there's an occasional shortage, well, that's too bad. We're in a desert here, and we're not supposed to be like Miami all the time, every day of the year, to infinity.
After the dam failure, my grandfather underwent the most profound change that you can imagine, and but he had been a vigorous, functioning 70-year-old man or 72-year-old man at the time the dam failed. And he simply shriveled. He'd come out to the ranch and he'd sit in the living room with his cigar, and the conversation would go around, and he would just shut his eyes. He would sit there like some kind of a sleeping giant. I was so struck as a child when I attended the funeral, and his body lay in state in City Hall. And the working men who came to pay their last respects to him, and some of them cried. And when I was 12 years old, and that made a big impression on me because I had never seen grown men cry. And so I derived from that this was a man who had commanded a lot of love and respect in his day. And I've spent a lifetime trying to jibe that with all the attacks that have been made on him by people who didn't know him.
Freeways are settling down, believe it or not. We checked on the 405 and the 101 leaving the Hollywood Hills. Not bad at all. No need to take alternate routes such as Laurel Canyon, Coldwater Canyon, or even Mulhollands Drive. I'm Dr. Roadmap, flying for Captain Jorge in Jetcopter 790.